American Timelines is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network, powered by Ortho Carolina. Find out more at queencitypodcastnetwork.com.
So now I'm obsessed with time. Come on, tell me about the time. Had it all in my hand tonight. Had the time of my life. When the words all come down like blues on Tuesdays come down. Throw it all away. Throw it all away.
Welcome to another episode of American Timelines. I'm Amy, and that's Joe.
Yes, and we are history for jerks and history for assholes.
And all of the above. And taints.
And taints. But we are sad this week because we got ghosted.
Well, we don't have to
By
spill
one-
our tea, as
by
their daughter
not
would
one,
say.
but two guests. We had a guest that had backed out, and he didn't ghost us. He gave us a heads up. He had something come up. The great, lovely Don Garrett, who's a great comedian. We're going to get him back later. But he had something to do with his mom that came up. Anyway. And then we had a backup guest, if you remember, Dr. Wolf Hammerstein. We were going to bring him back for Barrels of Laughs.
Yes.
But he was on vacation. So he said, yeah, I'll call in. I'm on vacation. Who cares? I can still call in. I'm dedicated.
And that
I'm a
prick
Wolf
didn't call.
He never called. He got too drunk.
Yep, that asshole.
So Wolf Hammerstein backed out. Don Garrett backed out. So we're going to have to go at it alone.
Old school.
Old school, like we used to with the first 130-some episodes.
Reunited, and it feels so good.
That's right. We are reunited. I think I'm going to take my shirt off.
No, don't. No, please.
It just,
Lord Jesus.
I mean, you got me
No.
like,
I feel
bam,
like
you got me.
I feel like it's more intimate now. All of a sudden,
It
Just
is.
me and you, babe.
Why do you think I'm taking my shirt off?
Please put it back
I'm
on.
going to take this
All right.
restricting pants off,
All
too.
right. All right.
And we're going to get started, though.
Yes.
But let's start. So let's not get everybody all mad that we're going blabbing about God knows what.
Yes.
We're going to jump right into
1951.
Yeah, well, we left off and we're going to be in August here. So
Yes, August 19th.
anyway, no hard feelings to our guests that left us. We still love them, possibly sexually, depending on
how many tequila shots you've had.
Yeah. Hey-oh! Hey-oh! Ha, 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 ha. Yes. All right, let's get started. So we're going to go ahead and start in August. This episode's going to cover August of 1951. Mm-hmm. Right? And you ready for this?
Yes,
And
I am ready.
Your thing, Amy's thing, is at the end.
Yes.
Of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have some things to cover first, okay? On August 11th, 1951, was the first televised baseball game in color.
Oh.
On WCBS in New York City. Boston Braves beat the Brooklyn Dodgers 8-1.
Okay.
And I don't care about that other than it was color, and we're talking about that. in the
Yeah.
other one, so we had to.
I bet that blew people's minds when it first happened.
When they first saw color
film.
shows. Yeah, it probably was amazing.
Yeah.
Can you believe it's in color? But this time, as we established, in 1951, was the first color broadcast a lot of times, but most people didn't see it. Because most people's sets couldn't get the color.
Yeah, they were black and white TVs.
While this is technically the first ones, most people didn't see them until later, until everybody got color sets.
I remember when I was little, I would get right up to the TV set and look at the little tiny
pixels
dots
or whatever.
Yeah. Did you ever do that?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that funny?
Yep.
And it was like a giant console TV.
Yeah,
it was
like
a piece of furniture.
Yeah. Jinx, buy me a Coke, inka, dinka,
Yeah.
pinka, winka, flush it down, I catch it, sink
Okay.
it. Okay, I won't do that whole thing. Yeah, my mom would have a lamp on it. You know, it was like a tabletop. Kind of
Right,
thing.
right.
Yeah. I remember we would lay down and sit real close to it.
And try to look at the little circles.
And put our feet on. I mean, it was real sturdy. You could kick it.
It was heavy as hell.
Yeah, it was real heavy. It took 8 people to move it. Yeah.
It was like heavy as a bed or something. Or
Yeah, it was furniture.
Yeah.
I mean, it was furniture. Anyway, that's what young kids won't ever understand. These kids with their flat screen TVs.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't get it. Like
These
we could.
kids.
Yeah, they're not allowed to touch the TVs now. Like I remember I'd watch Mr. Rogers completely with my feet on the TV screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It was either
putting-
that or
yeah.
they were the size of a laptop and they were black and white only.
Yeah.
Like those, the ones that your aunt had
Yeah, but they still were big, like thick.
Yeah, they were like
They weren't flat.
It was
like a
it was
laptop.
like shaped like a microwave.
Anyway, and this is old timey TV sizes with
History and TVs.
Yeah,
with Joe and Amy.
Amy and Joe, the history for jerks, the history of TVs when we were kids. But that's aging us, so we just lost all of our millennial and Generation Z.
Maybe they like to
listeners.
hear what it was like back in the
Maybe
olden
they do
days.
like to hear two idiots just blabbing on about big TVs. Well, then August 14th, 1951, A Place in the Sun, directed by George Stevens, starring Montgomery Clift, Elizabeth Taylor, and Shelley Winters, is released.
I've never seen that.
It won the Academy Award for Best Director in 1952. Yeah, it was based. So I watched the trailer. It looks kind of good. It was based on the 1925 novel An American Tragedy by Theodore Dreiser.
It's a good cast.
And the 1926 play, also titled An American Tragedy. It tells the story. Here's what it tells the story of, which I think it might be worth watching. It tells the story of a working class young man who is entangled with two women. One who works in his wealthy uncle's factory, and the other a beautiful socialite. This story was inspired by the real-life murder of Grace Brown by Chester Gillette in 1906, which resulted in Gillette's conviction and execution by electric chair in 1908.
Whoa.
So it was directed by George Stevens from a screenplay by Harry Brown and Michael Wilson and stars Montgomery Clift, Elizabeth Taylor, and Shelley Winters. Supporting actors included Anne Revere and Raymond Burr. It was a critical and commercial success, winning 6 Academy Awards and the first ever Golden Globe Award for Best Motion Picture Drama. So, yeah, I mean, I read kind of the deal with it, and he's got one girl already, and then his uncle owns the company, and he sort of schmoozes with his uncle and starts moving up. So he's a poor guy dating a poor woman, and then he meets this socialite, Elizabeth Taylor, who's beautiful.
Right.
And he's a really good-looking guy, too, Montgomery Clift. And then but he's already got the other girl pregnant, and he falls in love with Elizabeth Taylor, and then he doesn't want to tell each other about the girls. And then so...
Is there a murder involved or no?
Well, yeah, in the real-life murder, the guy takes the woman out on a boat, and she can't swim, and pushes her overboard.
God, that
And
would be a hard way to die.
So that might... I don't want to spoil this movie, but there's something to do with that, shoving her overboard, or maybe she falls. Maybe
you don't want to spoil this movie from 1951?
Yeah, we don't have spoiler alert on this movie. But yeah, I think he pushes her, or if she falls overboard. Like he goes out there to push her, but I guess she falls. I'm not sure. We'll have to watch it.
All right.
But there were some censorship issues. And here's the thing. Like, it's about a woman being murdered.
Right.
But the censorship was that...
sex related.
In November 14th, 1949... a letter from the Production Code Administration pointed out an issue regarding the dialogue between Alice and her doctor, Joseph Breen, who was part of the Production Code Administration, cautioned against direct references to abortion, specifically the line in the script in which Alice says, "Doctor, you've got to help me." In the finished film, the line became, "Somebody's got to help me." And while abortion is possibly implied, the film does not include any actual mention of abortion.
Jeez, that's those Hays codes that I was talking about.
Yeah, a woman can be murdered and killed and drowned to death because her husband's cheating on her, but you can't mention abortion.
But that's how it is still.
Yeah,
like,
it's ridiculous.
Sex is so much more tightly censored than violence. Violence is like glorified.
Yeah, well, we're Puritans.
Right, exactly.
I mean, people came here as Puritans, and sex was wrong and shameful.
And all that. It's sad.
Which is so wrong because, gosh, sex is wonderful. It's a wonderful, natural, normal thing.
Right.
Think about if they weren't Puritans.
Let's not have a sex talk on our podcast.
No. I'm just saying this country would be just... If they weren't Puritans starting this country, it would be just genitals all the time, wouldn't it?
Probably.
Yeah. George O'Keeffe paintings.
The Puritans are the kinkiest behind closed doors.
Oh, behind closed doors, they get crazy, right? Is that right?
Yes.
It's just the ones who are quiet and meek and want to cancel everything.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who are sexy behind closed doors. August 15th, 1951, John Frank Dalton, do you know who that is?
No.
He's a fella who died on this date
Oh, okay.
at age 103.
Aw.
He publicly claimed to be the famous outlaw Jesse James.
Did he really?
Yeah, so remember we already talked about the other guy who claimed to be Billy the Kid.
Yeah.
I think this is a common thing. And the jury's out.
Just these old guys in the 50s.
Just claim that they're these.
I was. Yeah.
I'm the real Jesse James. So he originally claimed to be Deputy U.S. Marshal Frank Dalton. His name was John Frank Dalton. The true origin of this guy remains obscure, and his name itself perhaps was just an alias. Ed Bartholomew, a rare book dealer and Old West historian, would relate that Dalton was using the nickname The Kid when they first met at a 1933 Corpus Christi Old Timers Convention.
Oh boy, I bet that was a kick-in. The roof was bumping.
So I'm guessing like an Old Timers Convention is probably just a bunch of old guys talking about Billy the Kid and the Wild West and cowboys and Indians and stuff.
Yeah. It was probably a...
Especially in 1933 Old Timers Convention.
Yep.
Anyway, he said he remembered at least one local paper drawing the possible connection between this Dalton and Billy the Kid. He also said that Dalton was going by the name of Dolby at the time. And that's significant a little bit later. In the early 40s, J. Frank Dalton claimed to be the famous lawman of the Old West named John Franklin Frank Dalton.
Wait a minute. So in the early 40s, the same guy...
The guy who
who's
claimed to be Jesse James. Back in the 40s, he claimed to be Frank Dalton, who from 1884 until his death in 1887 had served as a deputy U.S. Marshal.
So he claimed he was a U.S. Marshal in the 40s.
That's who it was. It was this Frank Dalton. Contrary to Frank Dalton's claims, the Marshal was shot and killed in the line of duty in 1887 in a gun battle with members of the Smith-Dixon gang. So following the death, then later, here's about him claiming to be Jesse James. So he's already claimed to be one other guy from the old, and now this. So following the death of Jesse James hoaxer William John James in 1947.
Oh, so there was another one.
There was another
guy.
guy.
He had been Jesse James.
Orvis Lee Houck, who claimed to be a grandson of J. Frank Dalton and later renamed himself James Lee James III, or Jesse Lee James III, engineered Dalton's adoption of a new identity as Old West outlaw Jesse James.
I wonder if old people still do this.
Claim to be these,
yeah.
Well, they can't anymore. I mean, the farther away it gets, they'd have to be 200 and 300 years old or whatever. But so
I just mean, people from 50 years ago that disappeared. Do old people claim to be them?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, I bet there's people that claim to be Elvis.
I mean, they get
dementia
dementia and stuff sometimes.
Oh,
so
that could be.
There's probably a lot.
Signing himself as J. Frank Dalton, the old man on April 24th, 1948, executed an affidavit recounting the details of the historical Jesse James birth and claimed to be the famous outlaw. The affidavit was published with additional historical information about James and the claim in the Lawton Constitution newspaper the following month. On May 22nd, 1948, Dalton made 2 public appearances in Lawton's business district, giving speeches at each location. He posed as Jesse James in front of crowds and spoke about what life was like in the days of the Old West. This fed into not infrequent claims that Jesse James had faked his 1882 death and then adopted an alias. And Dalton's account incorporated many aspects told by prior Jesse James imposter William John James. James expert Homer Croy went to Lawton and found Dalton unable to answer many questions the authentic James should have known.
Oh, yeah.
But Houck continued to promote Dalton as Jesse James. On hearing of the claim, Rudy Turilli, the manager of Merrimack Caverns in Missouri.
I've been there.
I was going to ask you, do you know what that is?
Yes.
I have a lot. This
it was
episode,
a Jesse James hideout.
It was?
Yeah.
So this episode has a lot of Missouri questions for you. I'm going to quiz you on your St. Louis citizenship
you are?
later. Yeah.
Okay.
But this is my first little bit. I forgot this was in Missouri. So you've been there. Cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was the manager of this, and he arranged to bring Dalton to his site and launched a major promotional campaign. It was there that in June 1949, Dalton was interviewed by journalist Robert C. Ruark, who then published a 3-article account of his interview. Dalton, claiming to be 102 years old, told Ruark that the man shot and killed in 1882 and identified as Jesse James was actually a similar-looking house guest of James named Charlie Bigelow. Dalton related that after Bigelow's murder, he fled to Kansas City then went to Memphis and New Orleans and Florida, then to Brazil, and later to Mexico. He claimed to have eventually returned to Oklahoma, where he was elected to the territorial legislature under the name J. Frank Dalton before relocating to Texas. Dalton's account of himself as Jesse James did not hold up under questioning from James's surviving relatives, though. A debate between supporter Rourke and critic Croy was broadcast nationally by CBS.
Was it really?
So this became national news.
So, and it's just some crazy old guy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And there's more. It keeps going back and forth, this story. This is all from Wikipedia. I didn't even leave Wikipedia for any of this, so who knows how real it is.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's...
Excuse me as I sip my hop slam. A 110-year-old Oklahoma man who claimed to have known both outlaws was invited and made a positive identification.
Oh, really?
Yes. But he's an 110-year-old man.
Oh, God, yeah.
Think about, do you think you can get any
No.
correct information from somebody who's 110?
Well, and how can you tell somebody, a 105-year-old, which the other guy's supposed to be 105,
Yeah.
how could you tell a 105-year-old that they are somebody when they were in their 20s or whatever?
Well, especially because dementia, you're supposed to just agree with them anyway. If it is, Alzheimer's.
But how much different are they going to look?
Well, and if he really
what I'm
wasn't
saying.
104, he was probably 88 or something.
Right.
They also invited a 1930s-era Oklahoma bank robber, but I didn't see whether or not he agreed with it. The next day, Dalton was posed for a photograph with another Old West pretender, Brushy Bill Roberts. That's the guy we claimed who we talked about last time, who claimed to be Billy the Kid.
There's so many of them.
And the two would offer mutual support for each other's claims. So the two liars are helping each other.
You all right?
Yeah, this carbonation man.
Yeah.
And this hop slam is great. J. Frank Dalton died on this date, August 15th, 1951, in Granbury, Texas, and a post-mortem examination was said to have found several of the distinguishing body marks and features that the real Jesse James was rumored to have had.
Several or all?
Several.
Wouldn't it have to be all?
Including numerous bullet wounds, a rope burn around his neck,
Whoa.
a damaged tip, and severely burned feet.
So what in the hell did he go through in his life?
Maybe he did these things to himself. But he's also, if he was 104.
But they would be old injuries.
Yeah, that's true. This claim differs from earlier reports that showed Dalton's finger injury was on the wrong finger, that he had no evident chest wounds, which Houck explained by claiming skin grafts had been performed. So maybe the report's not even true.
I can't believe they had skin grafts back then.
Oh, in the 50s and 40s, yeah. Well, Dalton's death certificate was recorded with the name of the man he claimed to be, Jesse Woodson James.
Oh, really?
The name also appearing on a gravestone erected at his burial site in Granbury Cemetery in 1983. In 1966, Turelli offered a $10,000 reward for anyone who could prove that Dalton was not James.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't there somebody that knows this
Well,
guy?
after the daughter-in-law and grandchildren of the real Jesse James presented evidence, it ended in a court case in which they were ruled to have satisfied the burden of proof, and Turelli was ordered to pay the reward. The decision was upheld on appeal, but Turelli died in 1972, never paid it.
Oh, whoops.
Whoop.
Oh, well.
And there were some exhumations.
Oh, yeah, they had to.
In 1995, the gravesite historically attributed to Jesse James at the Mount Olivet Cemetery in Kearney, Missouri. You know where that is?
Kearney?
Kearney, like Kearney. Kearney.
I'm not sure.
It was exhumed, and the remains were examined and found to be consistent with James's historical record, and mitochondrial DNA analysis performed on the remains were found to match two matrilineal relatives of the historic outlaw, leaving no scientific basis for doubting that it was indeed the outlaw Jesse James, whose remains had been transferred to Mount Olivet in 1902 from the gravesite of the James family farm where he had been buried in 1882. So that's the real Jesse James.
Yeah,
that
he was
says
in the ground all along.
Yeah, so that says that is him still.
Yeah, right.
And there were, I guess, some that kind of goes along with a handwriting test they did with Dalton and Jesse James that didn't seem to match.
Yeah. So what did that guy go through in his life with the burns and the
That's what I said. He probably
holes
did
and
those things.
But he would have had to have done them in his when he was young.
So maybe this guy was just another outlaw like that. Maybe they were outlaws
maybe
that
it was
didn't
together or something.
Yeah,
or
or
didn't
maybe
get
they're outlaws
along.
that didn't get any credit. It's like
Yeah.
maybe he was a follower of Billy or of Jesse James and Billy the Kid.
Yeah, that's
You know what
probably
I
it.
mean?
That's
Like,
probably true.
maybe I knew Jesse James. Doesn't sound as exciting as I was Jesse James.
Right.
So maybe
Yeah.
he was somebody.
Yeah.
Beginning in 1996, amateur historian Bud Hardcastle, with the support of 3 sons of James descendant Jesse Cole James, began a push to exhume the Granbury, Texas grave belonging to Dalton to allow for DNA testing of the remains. And listen to this crazy shit. The 3 James brothers believed that J. Frank Dalton was their grandfather.
What?
And that he was also the real Jesse James. An initial petition to the Hood County, Texas court was declined that year, but the subsequent request was approved in the year 2000. During the exhumation, which occurred on May 30th, 2000, the investigative team found 2 coffins at the gravesite.
What?
A large steel vault and a wooden casket. And since the exhumation order was restricted to only 1 coffin, they chose the closest to the tombstone, the steel vault, and they removed that one for study, but not the wooden one. However, when the contents of the steel vault were examined, they proved to be the remains of a one-armed Granbury resident named William Henry Holland, leaving the question of Dalton's genetic identity unanswered.
So is this Jesse James's grave or Dalton's grave?
This was Dalton's grave. That for some reason, descendants of Jesse James believed that he really was Jesse James.
So they exhumed him.
They went to exhume him, but they found 2 coffins. And because the order is very,
right for one
they
coffin.
They could only do one of them, so
Yeah.
they just randomly chose one, and
they
it
never-
wasn't the right guy. Like they opened it up, and it was a one-armed guy named William Henry Holland.
And so we don't know if he's in the wooden one.
So I don't know what this is all according to Wikipedia. So maybe since they've done something, but
Well, that was twisty and turny.
twisty and turny story, and I don't know if
liked
any of
it.
it's true.
I
You like that?
Yeah, I like that.
Wow, I was totally while I was working on this, I was like, she's not even gonna let me get any of this in because she's gonna hate it.
No, that's all up my alley.
Well, the good thing is we didn't have a stupid asshole guest to like ruin this.
Don't say that.
Just kidding, former guests.
You're funny.
August 16th, 1951. You're going to like this one too, I think.
Okay.
If I can keep this one as succinct as that one. I went through and edited a lot out, so hopefully I
Good.
got this good, okay?
All right.
And this is, I got 2 more stories before yours. Okay, so this one will be shorter, hopefully. This wasn't in America,
Okay.
so get off my ass, time heads.
Wait a minute. Can I guess what it is?
What do you mean? You're going to guess the whole story? Or what country it is? Well, you can look at my screen.
No, I didn't see it. I just am curious because there was one that I almost did.
Something you looked up. Okay, yeah. So this was
In France?
in France.
LSD?
Yeah, the
involved?
mass hallucination.
Yes, Queen.
Yes, queen,
Yes,
as our daughter
hunty.
says. Period. That's what our daughter says all the time.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so when I looked this up, I started digging into this as a possible LSD CIA experiment called Project Span.
Yeah.
So it was a case of mass hallucinations and insanity
Yeah.
in a small French village in August of 1951. And they say it may or may not have been caused by a secret CIA LSD experiment called Project Span. The 1951 Pont Saint-Esprit mass poisoning, also known as Le Pain Maudit.
I don't think you looked any of those up.
Le Pain Maudit. It was a mass poisoning on August 16th, 1951 in the small town of Pont Saint-Esprit.
Esprit, I think is how you say
Esprit, because there was a girls, when I was in middle school, girls all wore shirts.
Esprit.
that said,
That was a Esprit was
they
a
all said they were
brand.
Esprit shirts, but I said that says Esprit.
Oh.
So Pont Saint-Esprit in southern France. Anyway, more than 250 people in this town were involved, including 50 people interned in asylums, and there were 7 deaths related to this.
Wow.
A foodborne illness was suspected.
How many asylums were in this little town that you want to know?
I don't know, maybe a lot.
It's
I don't
weird.
know. I didn't look that part up. I
No,
should
I'm
have.
just curious. It's just
I'm curious too. A foodborne illness was suspected, and among these, it was originally believed to be a case of cursed bread, also known as pain maudit. On August 16th, 1951, the local offices of the town's 2 doctors filled with patients reporting similar food poisoning symptoms: nausea, vomiting, cold chills, and heat waves. These symptoms eventually worsened with added hallucinatory crises and convulsions.
Jesus.
The situation in the town deteriorated in the following days.
How many people?
Up to 250.
Holy shit.
On the night of August 24th, a man believed himself to be an airplane, and he died by jumping from a second-story window.
Oh, boy.
And across town, an 11-year-old boy strangled his mother.
Oh, my God.
One of the town's 2 doctors would name the night Nuit d'Apocalypse.
I wish you would have looked up these
Apocalyptic
pronunciations.
night. Nuit? Nuit d'Apocalypse? Is that right? Nuit d'Apocalypse? How do you look up French pronunciations?
You just look them up, like Google them.
Your mom Googled.
All right.
Nuit?
All right. It's
I'll look up Nuit right now, and then we'll correct it. Da 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 da. Da, 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 da. I did look up something earlier today. It's Nuit.
Bonjour, this is Julian the Frenchman who makes French pronunciation videos here on YouTube, and we are looking at how to say night in French.
Night.
How to pronounce this word properly. How do you
Night.
say night in French then? Nu, I. The T is
Oh.
silent at the end.
Nuit.
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 Is that what I said?
I don't remember.
Nuit.
What's the next word?
Across town, an 11-year-old boy strangled his mother. One of the town's 2 doctors would name the night Nuit d'Apocalypse, apocalyptic night. Doctors investigated the epidemiology of the disease. I said that right.
Mm-hmm.
They came to the conclusion that bread was to blame. All patients interrogated had purchased their bread at the Briand Bakery in Pont Saint-Esprit. During the interrogation,
Oh, wow.
Maurice Mallet, a local grain miller, admitted that he had made a deal with a baker, Guy Bruere, who had brought in bags of grain to be milled. And since this was near the end of the season, the bags were filled with leftover grain that sometimes contained a high proportion of rye. The rye was not the only problem. Rye is known to kind of fuck up flour, I guess,
Okay.
making flour. But that was not the only problem, as the miller also noted the presence of weevils, mites, and
Ugh.
dust. The baker was concerned that he would lose business should he refuse the grain on the basis of quality, so he accepted it. And despite the miller having noticed the low quality of the grains, he agreed to exchange the grain for a lower quantity of flour already milled from grain marked for export. So I guess they export all the shitty grain. So
Yeah.
So this was shitty grain that they turned into shitty flour. And so
Shitty
they
bread,
discovered so the bread was made from shit.
Yeah.
So Maurice Mallet and Guy Bruere were arrested for involuntary manslaughter and involuntary injuries arising from their negligence in trading the improper flour. Further arrests were made the following days. An employee of Mallet, Andre Bertrand, was arrested but released on bail as he was the head of a family of 9 whose wife was about to give birth.
Oh, Jesus.
So you get out for
Yeah.
that. The owners of the bakery at which Blech was employed, Clothier and Denise Audier, were also arrested for infractions of fiscal legislation and of legislation governing wheat and flour. But in a 2009 book called A Terrible Mistake, author Hank P. Albarelli Jr. originated a conspiracy theory claiming that the Special Operations Division of the CIA tested the use of LSD on the population of Pont Saint-Esprit as part of its biological warfare program in a field test called Project Span.
Does he have any evidence?
But yeah, I didn't see any. There's not much on that I could find. I didn't look real hard. But he just wrote a 2009 book just claiming bullshit. But I think they've found the people. They've arrested them. It was the shitty bread.
You never know. I mean, they did Project Blue Book, and they did.
That's true. Would shitty bread cause that much mass hysteria, though, you think?
That's just weird, the hallucinations. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so what do I know?
You're
But-
not?
Nope. I'm only a doctor of love.
You sure are a doctor of love.
That's all.
Do you think you could? Do you think if you would have applied yourself, just being that you're so smart, like if you would have applied yourself to be a doctor, that you'd be a good one? Right now?
No.
Why? You're real smart.
First of all, I'm squeamish,
You are squeamish.
Second of all,
Although you're pretty damn good with tweezers if somebody's got a
Splinter?
splinter.
that's pretty.
Plus, you gave birth to a human twice.
Well, it doesn't matter.
And all kinds of shit fell out of you.
Oh, blech.
That
Can we
shit
not
falling
talk
out?
about
All
this
right, sorry. Yeah.
on the podcast? Jesus Christ.
Afterbirth.
Cut that out.
It was just like endless.
Oh, you didn't even see it.
I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I willfully ignored it. August 19th, 1951. Let's get moving because you got a murder to tell us.
I
You got
know.
you got horrible rapes to get to.
Nope.
August 19th, 1951. This one is also fun. This is a fun month. It's a shame Don Garrett backed out. Don Garrett was our original guest. That he last minute he had something go on with his mom and he couldn't be here. But I hope to reschedule Don Garrett because he's a hilarious comedian. So I hope Don Garrett comes in later. It's sad that we can't share all this with him.
Yeah.
But on August 19th, 1951, Eddie Gaedel. Do you know who that is? Gaedel, have you ever heard of him?
Nope.
Eddie Gaedel, weighing 60 pounds and standing 3 feet 7 inches,
Aw.
became the shortest player in the history of the major leagues in baseball.
Really?
Yes.
How tall was he?
3
feet?
foot 7. 60 pounds.
So did he have dwarfism?
He was
or-
a little person.
Oh, and he played Major League Baseball?
He did.
That's awesome.
It's not awesome. It's not as
Oh.
awesome as you think.
Because of the way people treated him?
Well, because why he was there. Like he wasn't there because he was a great baseball player.
Oh,
Like,
was it like the jester? Like he
It
make
was
people
yeah,
laugh?
it was a promotion
Oh.
to sell tickets.
Now I'm destroyed.
Yeah, this is sad. It's still it's cool in a couple ways for him, but it's not cool.
I should have known in
generally.
1951. There's
They
no
wouldn't.
way
They wouldn't be that progressive, and
No.
somebody could do this and overcome.
I mean,
odds.
they
No.
were still freak shows in
Yeah,
1951.
it's like
for
a freak.
Christ's sake.
It was a freak show thing. Goodell made a single plate appearance, and he was walked with 4 consecutive balls before being placed by a pinch runner at first base. So, do you know what? I know you don't know a lot about baseball, but you
No.
know what a walk is, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You do.
Yeah. If you get 3 balls.
Yeah. And do you
Get
know
a
what a
walk?
ball is?
Yes.
What?
It's when the ball isn't pitched correctly
And you don't swing.
and you don't swing. Yeah.
So if you swing it, obviously, and
It's a
miss it, it's a
strike.
strike. So, and if they throw 4 pitches, so, and when you say correctly, I don't know if you know this, but there's a strike zone.
Yes. I know
And
about that.
and the ball has to be deemed hittable,
Right.
basically. So you have to put it in the strike zone. But the strike zone is based on the size of the player.
Oh.
So if it's a real small person, his strike zone is real small.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be it's like from his, I don't know, shoulder to his waist or knee to, I don't know where it is
the
exactly.
knee bone connected to the leg bone. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, thanks for getting that out. Anyway, the strike zone would be shorter on a smaller person because it's just this square that's next to their body where you're deemed that they should be able to hit it. So, so he was walked, and then once he got to first base, they put in a pinch runner. St. Louis Browns owner Bill Veeck was known as a showman who enjoyed staging publicity stunts.
Mm-hmm.
His whole thing. There's a whole YouTube video I just watched earlier today about this guy and how he would do all kinds of promotions. His idea was baseball needs to be fun.
Right.
It shouldn't just be a baseball game. And that's it. You should do fun stuff
Yeah.
to sell tickets. He was a promotions guy.
And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean you need to. And to
Because
this
baseball's
day,
boring as fuck.
well, to this day, minor league games, you go to a minor league game, there's always like a pro wrestler that's signing
Yeah.
autographs or some kind of promotion, or you sell baseballs, or you do these
So you
things.
get those little plastic baseball hats with ice cream in them.
Yeah, you get that. You add all this extra shit. They have at the minor league game in Charlotte, they have a night where you can bring your dog.
Oh my god.
And there's 1 million dogs in the audience, and they will play sound effects of like doorbells. and
Oh,
stuff.
no,
Yeah.
you're
just to get all the
kidding.
dogs barking. Yeah, it's hilarious.
oh
yeah.
my god.
They do Star Wars nights. They do all kinds of shit like that.
Yeah.
So, and you've been to a couple games, and
Yeah.
have you paid attention to the game at all?
Yeah.
You have?
Somewhat. I mean, I know I'm not an idiot.
Well, what I'm saying, I was suggesting that most people, even I, don't watch. I mean, I understand baseball, and if I go to a minor league game, I don't know any of the players. I
No,
don't
I don't know
watch the
players.
game really. I don't care who wins. There is a fun drinking gambling game that I like to play where you pass a cup. Everybody, you put $1 in a cup, and then if the guy who's at bat while you have the cup hits a home run, you get all the money in the thing.
Oh, that's fun.
And then if not,
That makes it more
if
fun.
he doesn't hit a home run, you put $1 and pass it on to the next guy. So with your party, if you have like 8 people, you just keep passing the cup and you keep adding dollars to it. So if you have the cup, when somebody hits a home run, you get all the money.
Oh, that's pretty
That's my
sweet.
favorite thing to
Yeah,
do.
that's fun.
And to pronounce peanuts, and then
Yes, and we've been through that.
talk about that a lot. So anyway, so Bill Veeck knew that it looks like it's Veeck, but it's Veck. He was the owner of the St. Louis Browns. Did you know that the St. Louis Browns
Yes.
existed?
Yes.
You knew there was a baseball team called the St. Louis Browns?
Yeah, before the Cardinals.
I think it was around the same time as the Cardinals because they moved to Baltimore and became the Orioles later.
Oh.
But there were St. Louis Browns. I didn't know. They were the Brown Stockings. They were based on the Brown Stockings. Anyway, so he was the owner of this team, and he found Goodell through a booking agency. He was secretly signed by the Browns and added to the team roster because there's rules to this kind of stuff to get somebody to play.
Yeah.
So he was added to the roster and put in a uniform with the number 1/8 on the back. The uniform belonged to a 9-year-old bat boy for the Browns at the time. And Goodell, so on this day that Goodell showed up, there was a doubleheader, and they made Goodell jump out of a papier-mâché cake between games of a doubleheader at Sportsman's Park in St. Louis. Do you know where Sportsman's Park is? Is that something that existed later or not?
Sportsman's Park. 'Cause we had Busch Stadium. That's what.
Yeah, that was
where-
later. So Sportsman's Park, you'll have to look up. It was probably
Yeah.
gone by the time you were around. Anyway, so he jumped out of it to celebrate the American League's 50th anniversary. The stunt was also billed as a Falstaff brewery promotion. Have you ever heard of Falstaff Brewery?
Yes.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Because they went out of business in the 80s or so, or 70s or 80s or something.
Yeah.
It's owned by Pabst Blue Ribbon now. But Falstaff Brewery and the fans had been promised a festival of surprises by Veck.
Maybe I don't know the Falstaff Brewery. I just know Falstaff beer.
I guess there was Falstaff beer, but I think that ended then too,
Oh,
like in the
okay.
70s or something. But before the second game got underway, and all that had happened is this little person jumped out of a cake, the press agreed that the quote-unquote midget in a cake appearance had not been up to Veck's usual promotional standard. Falstaff Brewery personnel, who had been promised national publicity for their participation, were particularly dissatisfied. Keeping the surprise he had in store for the second game to himself, Veck just meekly apologized, knowing he was going to do this whole stunt. Goodell entered the second half of the doubleheader between the Browns and the Detroit Tigers, and the bottom of the first inning as a pinch hitter for leadoff batter Frank Saucier. And I did look up that name, so I thought it would be Saucier, but it's Saucier. Immediately, umpire Ed Hurley called for the Browns manager Zach Taylor, and Veck and Taylor had the foresight to have a copy of Goodell's contract on hand because they knew this would happen, as well as a copy of the Browns' active roster, which had room for Goodell's addition. The contract had been filed late in the day on Friday, August 17th, because Veck knew the league office would summarily approve the contract upon receipt and that it would not be scrutinized until Monday, August 20th.
Oh.
So he knew that would fall under the radar. Upon reading the contract, Hurley mentioned for Goodell to take his place in the batter's box. As a result of Goodell's appearance, all contracts must now be approved by the Commissioner of Baseball before a player can appear in a game. So that's kind of the Goodell rule.
Yeah.
Goodell was under strict orders not to attempt to move the bat off his shoulder.
What's that mean?
Do not swing.
Oh.
He did not want him, he thought this kid's going to get up there and really this man's going to get up there and want to hit a home run,
Yeah.
Like this is an at-bat in a major league game that he'll never get, So he was
Well, he probably wants to show people that he's
maybe
not
he can really do it.
an idiot. Yeah.
Well,
or that he's not.
Well, Andy's so excited, and he really did. I guess there were some promises. Like, he felt like he was promised that he would have a career after this in baseball. So he was
Really?
excited to do this. But Veck was scared. Like, Veck wanted him to get on base. And he knew that if he swung, he knew that a pitcher couldn't get in the strike zone.
Okay.
And he was like, if he swings, he's going to strike out.
Right.
Because he's not a major league player. So Vec got the impression that Goodell might be tempted to swing. So he told Goodell that he had taken out a $1 million insurance policy on his life, and that he'd have somebody standing on the roof of the stadium with a rifle, prepared to kill Goodell if he even looked like he was going to swing.
What?
Yeah. I think he said he would be doing it himself, possibly. So, isn't that crazy?
That's a specific threat.
That's a very specific threat. So Vec had carefully trained Goodell to assume a tight crouch at the plate, and measured his strike zone in that stance and claimed it was just 1.5 inches high. And then Bob Kane was on the mound, pitcher, and he started laughing at the absurdity that they actually had to pitch to Goodell. And catcher Bob Swift had to catch on his knees instead of crouching. He just got on his knees, and Goodell took his stance.
Can I ask, what's the promotion? Like, what's the appeal? Just that they're gonna watch a person with the dwarfism play.
Well,
baseball?
if you think about it, everybody in the stands is probably like, "Oh my God, what is happening? Look at this! Look at this! It's a spectacle. It's a spectacle. Everybody is probably like, "Holy, oh my God, look at this!"
Yeah.
And the catcher's on his knees.
Yeah.
The pitcher's laughing because he didn't know what was going to happen.
Okay, I'm got it.
And
now.
you got to imagine it's just all these and it's the 50s.
Right,
you know?
right.
I'm sure everyone just laughed at anybody that was different or whatever. You know, it was probably just
right in your face. Yeah.
And this poor little person. Now, then again, the little person was hired by a promotional company.
Right.
You know,
he
so
kind of knew what he was getting into.
So his whole career is being hired to be a spectacle.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of little people probably still to this day. You know, they have midget wrestling, as they call it, and stuff like that. And that's stuff still goes on.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think it was a thing where he was like sitting there sad and crying and hurt inside. 'Cause I think he did this all the time. Maybe he was. But, you know, so the pitcher's laughing, the catcher's on his knees. And I imagine from what I've read in the story, it was kind of a moment of levity where everybody kind of just like didn't really take it seriously. But Kane delivered the first pitches, like real pitches, like legitimate attempts at strikes. And then the last two, I guess, were just half speed tosses because he realized he wasn't going to get him.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it. It's ridiculous. And Goodell took his base, and then he stopped twice during his trot to the first base to bow to the crowd. And the whole crowd was just going nuts, excited about this. And then he was replaced by pinch runner Jim Delsing. And so I just looked up Jim Delsing just because what's this guy's deal? And this is where it gets into the St. Louis quiz. I want to know about from you.
Okay.
Have you heard of any of these things? And so I really wanted to make a connection to you and Jim Delsing for some reason. So he's the guy, like he's an actual baseball player that comes in. And so I looked up his personal life. And on November 1st, 1949, Jim Delsing married Roseanne Brennan. You know who that is? Lives in St. Louis?
No.
She was a stewardess for an airline, and they bought a house in St. Louis in 1952, and they continued to live there until 1984 when they moved to the Chesterfield area.
Yeah.
Do you know where that is?
Yeah, it's a suburb of St. Louis.
How far is that from where you lived?
About
in Kirkwood.
25 or 30 minutes.
It's like 30 minutes from Kirkwood? Okay. Now
if I can remember right.
You haven't been there in a long time, but you lived in Kirkwood, which is also the same place Nikki Glazer, comedian, went to high school. Anyway, okay, so you've heard of Chesterfield, so you're batting 100% right now, or 1,000 per 1,000, whatever.
Okay.
The Delsings then had 5 children. So let's see, do you know any of these children? Daughters Kim,
no, I'm not going to know any.
Jamie, born in 1954. Mari or Moochie. Did you know anybody named Moochie?
No.
And sons Jay and Bart. Jay went on to join the professional golf.
People would have been like my mom's age.
That's what I thought. Maybe your mom knows them, and they came over. Oh, Moochie came over. They went on to join the Professional Golfers Association, where he played golf competitively. And this was what you might know. Jim's grandson, Taylor Twellman, was the MVP of Major League Soccer in 2005. Did you know what Taylor Twellman?
Honey. This is ridiculous.
No? Okay, one more. After Delsing retired, he spent 30 years as an advertising salesman for tell me if you've heard this, the St. Louis Review.
No.
A Catholic newspaper.
Well, it's not the Catholic newspaper that I chose.
It wasn't the one you chose to. Okay, Delsing was also involved in a couple other St. Louis things. The St. Vincent de Paul Society.
I've heard of.
You have?
I think.
The St. Nicholas Food Pantry,
No.
the Ascension Altar Society, and other Catholic charities.
All right. Why are we talking about this other baseball player? and
Jim
going into his-
Delsing also died of cancer on May 4th, 2006. Do you know anybody who died of cancer?
Stop.
Okay. Anyway, the 18,369 fans that were there gave Goodell a standing ovation. And then baseball's reaction. Vec had hoped that Delsing would go on to score in a one-run Browns victory, so that would have happened, But he ended up stranded at third base, and the Tigers ended up winning the game 6-2. American League President Will Harridge was not excited about this. He said Vec was making a mockery of the game. He voided Goodell's contract the next day.
God, lighten up.
In response, Vec threatened to request an official ruling on whether Yankees shortstop and reigning American League MVP Phil Rizzuto, who was 5'6", was a short ball player or a tall dwarf. So Vec kind of like gave the shit back to him. Initially, Major League Baseball struck Goodell from its record book as if he had not been in the game.
Well, and if
But
he
he was-
liked it, I mean, if it's what he wanted to do, and if he liked it, I mean, somebody had to be first, right? I'm trying to decide whether it's
a little person has probably never played since, and it's sort of like a big joke.
there's a big joke on him. So you just, I
But-
mean, what if he
But is it a joke if you're
in on it?
like
He knew,
having fun with it
right?
or not? I don't. That's a good question. It's like it's a lot of times the way I feel about like Louis Anderson when he does stand up.
Yeah, because
So that stand up show you and I saw of Louis.
yeah,
The first half was hilarious comedy, jokes about his family.
yeah,
And then you can tell when he runs out of new material, he just does 100 fat jokes.
yeah.
And everybody's laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watched that with Louis Anderson, I love Louis Anderson. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
But I felt really sad when he started into the fat jokes. It was just like endless fat jokes that he just sat there like just reciting fat jokes almost like a robot. Like because he
Yeah.
knew. And people are laughing so hard at these fat jokes, almost harder than they were the whole rest of the show. That made me kind of sad.
Yeah,
So
I
it's a
can see
sad
that.
thing. So this reminds me of that. So I don't
Yeah.
know if it's, and maybe Louis not sad about it. Maybe he doesn't give a shit. He knows he's heavy, but it's like, it seems like he just makes himself, I don't know. It doesn't feel right, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they took him out of the record book, but then he was relisted a year later. They put him as a right-handed batter and left-handed thrower, although he didn't play the field. And Eddie Goodell finished his major league career with an on-base percentage of 1,000. His total earnings as a pro athlete were only $100, but that was equivalent to $985 in 2019. That was the scale price for an American Guild of Variety Artist appearance, which is what he was. Sorry.
You have hiccups.
Yeah. You know, all kinds of problems.
I know. Your body's making noises.
He was later able to parlay his baseball fame, though, into more than $17,000 by appearing on several television shows. So that's kind of the good piece of this to me.
Like
It's
extended his
yeah,
fame.
like he got $17,000 just as being that
Yeah.
guy who did that.
Yeah.
So good on him. He got $17,000. His jersey bearing the uniform number 1/8 is displayed in the St. Louis Cardinals Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. So I guess the Cardinals didn't exist then. And then a little bit about Eddie Goodell. Due to his size, he had worked as a riveter during World War II because he was able to crawl inside the wings of airplanes and do repairs and stuff. So that's like a really cool thing that he was.
Yeah.
I just don't
That's
think
brilliant.
it just drives me nuts he wasn't appreciated like that. So
Yeah.
but he was a professional performer, belonged to the American Guild of Variety Artists, like we talked about. After the war, he was hired in 1946 by Mercury Records as a mascot to portray the Mercury Man. He sported a winged hat similar to the record label's logo to promote Mercury recordings. Later, in Major League Baseball, let's see, Vec acquired the White Sox, and the native Chicagoan once again found some high-profile, albeit non-playing ballpark employment. A helicopter in 1959, a helicopter carrying Goodell and 3 other dwarfs dressed as spacemen invaded Comiskey Park to deliver ray guns to the White Sox smaller players. But it's tragic how Eddie Goodell died. On June 18th, 1961, the unemployed Goodell, who had a notorious drinking problem. Like, he was
Yeah.
drunk and all the time at bars, and I guess he'd get into fights and stuff all the time. He'd
Well,
get
and
lippy with people,
Well, and
people would pick on him.
people would pick on him, and his liver's not
As big. Well,
as big.
he just turned 36. He was at a bowling alley in Chicago,
He's only 36.
which is his birthplace and hometown. And Goodell was followed home and beaten after an argument with a bunch of dudes at a bar. And he was beaten, and his mother discovered him lying dead in his bed the next day. He had bruises about his knees and on the left side of his face. A coroner's inquest determined that he had also suffered a heart attack.
That's awful.
And Bob Kane, who'd pitched to Goodell, was
Did they ever find out who did it?
No, of course not. Bob Kane, who'd pitched to Goodell, was the only Major League Baseball figure to attend the funeral.
Oh, the assholes.
Yep. But due to his scarcity, Goodell's autograph now sells for more than Babe Ruth's.
Really?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow.
And Goodell's grandnephew, Kyle Goodell, was selected in the June 2011 MLB draft by the San Diego Padres and played minor league baseball as high as the AA level.
Oh, okay.
So that's a little bit.
Little
happy
tidbit.
ending. Yeah, a little bit of tidbit there. And that's all I have.
Oh.
And so that brings us to August 25th, which I'm going to turn this now over to my beautiful blonde bombshell of a bride, Amy, to tell us about some 7-hour-long rape.
Nope.
No?
No.
No rapes?
No.
Is this a rape-free episode?
Rape free?
Rape free! This episode of American Timelines is rape free! Thanks to the people at Shell Oil.
All right. So I'm going to talk about the Lubbock Lights.
The Lubbock Lights. Okay, this is not sponsored by Shell.
No. And my main source is history.com article by Hadley Mears.
History.com, Hadley Mears rules, y'all. Okay, so I don't know what the Lubbock Lights are.
Okay.
So tell us all about it. Is this an alien thing?
Maybe.
UFOs are cool and awesome and great. Boy, Don Garrett's really missing out by not being on our episode. Last minute cancellation, Don Garrett, but he had a family thing to do.
Quit making him feel bad.
He'll be back. But Don Garrett, if you're listening, you missed out on a good episode, buddy. When you come back, it'll probably be a shitty episode.
All right. August 25th, 1951.
Yeah.
Was a quiet summer night in Lubbock, Texas.
Okay. Lubbock, Texas. There's a lot of Texas stuff
Hold
today.
on, let me get a real quick drink of water.
Oh, she's going to take a drink of water, y'all. My wife is drinking water, and I'm still talking.
Okay.
It's kind of like when a ventriloquist talks while the...
That evening, a handful of
Drink some water.
scientists from Texas Technical College were hanging out in the backyard of geology professor Dr. W.I. Robinson.
Oh, you know when scientists hang out, it's a party.
They were drinking tea and chatting about micrometeorites.
Drinking tea and chatting micrometeorites.
It was quite the brain trust. Chemical
yeah.
engineering professor Dr. A.G. Oberg, physics
Oh,
professor
yeah.
Dr. George, and Dr. W.L. Ducker, head of the petroleum engineering department.
Oh, petroleum and engineering, motherfucker. Nothing more exciting than that.
Which made the story of what they witnessed that night all the more curious.
So these are scientists. They ain't going to fuck around.
If a group had been handpicked to observe a UFO, we couldn't have picked a more technically qualified group of people, wrote
Yes.
U.S. Air Force Captain Edwin L. Ruppelt later in his definitive 1956 casebook, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects.
It's funny that it sounds like the next thing he's going to say is, look, fellas, the first snapdragon of the sail.
In the early 1950s, Ruppelt served as
You're
lead
excused.
investigator for Project Blue Book.
Okay, Project Blue Book, which we've talked about on a previous episode.
Yeah,
If
the
you
official
didn't hear
Air
it,
Force
go back and listen to-
investigations into UFO sightings.
Yeah, go listen to all of our episodes till you find it.
Around 9:20 p.m., the university colleagues saw something otherworldly in the expanse of Texas sky.
All right.
A V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish green lights passing overhead.
Oh.
Stunned, but still using their trained scientific reasoning, they figured the lights would reappear. And they did, about an hour later in a more haphazard formation.
Haphazard.
The
Aliens.
the scientists were all in agreement. They had witnessed something fantastic, but what was it?
What was it?
The professors weren't the only credible witnesses to the mysterious blue-green lights that night. At dusk in Albuquerque, New Mexico, about 350 miles away from Lubbock, an employee of the Atomic Energy Commission's top-secret Sandia Corporation, a man with a high-level Q security clearance, had been sitting outside with his wife. According to Ruppelt, They were gazing at the night sky, commenting on how beautiful it was,
Yeah.
when both of them were startled at the sight of a huge airplane flying swiftly and silently over their home. On the aft edge of the wings, there were 6 to 8 pairs of soft, glowing bluish lights.
You know, and they didn't think about it. This is 1951. They had no technology then. They didn't even know how to make VCRs.
An hour or so after, according to a retired rancher from Lubbock, his wife had seen something terrifying in the night sky. Just after dark, his wife had gone outdoors to take some sheets off the clothesline. He was inside the house reading the paper. Suddenly, his wife had rushed into the house, as white as the sheets she was carrying.
Oh, boy.
The reason his wife was so upset was that she had seen a large object glide swiftly and silently over the house. She said it looked like an airplane without a body. On the back edge of the wing were pairs of glowing bluish lights.
Wow.
By the time Ruppelt flew into Lubbock to investigate the sightings in late September, hundreds of residents had seen the lights over a period of 2 weeks. But not everyone had waited for the government to start looking into the matter. After alerting local papers like Lubbock Avalanche Journal, the Texas Tech professors started their own investigation. In the weeks after their initial August 25th sighting, they and their friends observed the lights 12 more times.
Whoa.
They measured the lights' angles, roughly calculated their speed, and noted that they always traveled from north to south. Armed with walkie-talkies, the scientist sleuths and their friends formed 2 teams and attempted to measure the UFO's altitude with little success.
Huh.
As the days went on, more and more Lubbock residents claimed to have seen the lights. And when the professors cross-checked these reports against what they themselves had seen and recorded, many of the facts lined up. Ruppelt wrote, of course, few, if any, had recorded the phenomena with the same level of detail as the professors. But while many observers offered incomplete or poor expressed recollections, there's little doubt that whatever people were seeing was something real. UFO sightings are usually one-off events, but these blue-green lights were observed multiple times by hundreds of people.
Well, this first one was on August 25th?
Plus, for many, there was physical proof. Black and white photos taken by a Texas Tech freshman named Carl Hart Jr.
Yeah.
On August 31st,
Oh, the same day that Crime with Father was on ABC, starring Rusty Lane, Peggy Lobbin, Stephen Elliott. When Homicide Squad's Captain Ryland has a crime to solve, his best helper is usually his daughter, Chris. When
Yes.
that show was on, this happened?
yes, and it was also the same night an Air Force wife and her daughter claimed to have seen a UFO while driving northwest from Matador, Texas to Lubbock.
Wow.
Hart was keeping vigil in his bedroom looking out for the infamous lights. It was a warm night and his bed was pushed over next to an open window. He was looking out at the clear night sky and had been in bed about half an hour when he saw a formation of the lights appear in the north, cross an open patch of sky, and disappear over his house. Knowing that the lights might reappear as they had done in the past, he grabbed his loaded Kodak 35, set the lens and shutter at 3.5 and 1/10 of a second, and went out into the middle of the backyard. Before long, his vigil was rewarded when the lights made a second pass. He got 2 pictures. A third formation went over a few minutes later, and he got 3 more pictures.
Wow.
So these hotly debated images, which show a cluster of dim lights in a V formation
Yeah.
moving through the night sky, are the only visual representations of what hundreds were now claiming they saw. As Ruppelt began his formal investigation, he found that the lights had affected all who saw them, including a hardened old man from La Mesa who had witnessed them with his wife. He broke off his story of the lights and launched into his background as a native Texan with range wars, Indians, and stagecoaches under his belt, Rupert recalled of their interview session. What he was trying to point out was that despite the range wars, Indians, and stagecoaches, he had been scared. His wife had been scared too. The old La Mesa man had suggested that the lights were actually plover birds, a theory of which Ruppelt would lend some credence.
You said plover?
Plover birds, I've never heard of them.
Well, because they're fly. I mean, they fly. It's like in that V, like birds fly. Those are glowing birds.
I guess. But just like many people Ruppelt interviewed, the old man admitted he and his wife had been looking for the lights after reading about them in the paper. This was a common thread tying together many of the witnesses. One point of interest was that very few claimed to have seen lights before reading the professor's story in the paper. But this could get back to the old question, do people look up if they have no reason to do so? So what exactly did all these people witness? In the report on unidentified flying objects, Ruppelt, by all accounts, an honorable and fair man who oversaw what many describe as the golden age of the government's official UFO investigations, offers a strangely evasive explanation. I thought that the professor's lights might have been some kind of bird reflecting the light from mercury vapor street lights, but I was wrong. They weren't birds. They weren't refracted light, but they weren't spaceships. The lights that the professor saw have positively been identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomenon.
What?
I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found because it's an interesting story of how a scientist said it's an interesting
What?
All right, I'm going to skip this part.
Say what?
Yeah, because he says something about how it's a natural phenomenon,
Phenomenon.
but he can't tell us what it is because he
Don't
promised
worry,
the
everyone.
source that
It's something
he
normal.
wouldn't.
I can't tell
Yeah.
you.
So the mystery remains unsolved.
What?
The Lubbock Light incident persists in the memory of many older citizens and to this day captivates researchers from across the country.
The Lubbock Lights, y'all. Google this, please. Do yourself a
Yeah.
favor.
Some
Stop
believe-
whatever you're doing.
Some believe
If you're in the middle of a meeting where you're listening to our podcast while you're supposed to be listening to a meeting, end the meeting now. Leave the meeting. Get up. Punch the person speaking in the meeting
Okay.
if you can, and look up the Lubbock Lights.
right. Mention the event, and everyone has an opinion. This is what Dr. Monty L. Monroe says.
Monty L. Monroe, y'all.
Some believe the bright semicircular so-called string of beads crossed the sky at great speed high into the stratosphere. Few agree with the streetlight illuminated migratory duck belly theory ventured at the time by skeptics or in the Air Force report.
So it was like glowing duck guts.
Duck bellies. According to
Glowing.
Monroe, the professors and other witnesses, tired of explaining themselves and what they saw, almost totally ceased giving interviews by the 1970s. In a rare informal interview more than 40 years after the sightings, Carl Hart Jr. reportedly told author and UFO researcher Kevin D. Randall he still had no idea what he had photographed that pleasant August night many moons ago. But like hundreds of other witnesses in and around Lubbock, that strange Texas summer, he saw something he would never forget.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
That's the story of the Lubbock Lights.
Yeah, please Google this, listeners, because it's pretty freaky looking. Like it's
well,
all,
and it went on for so long. And they
yeah,
couldn't
and
figure
so
out
many
what it
different
was.
places, all from Albuquerque to Texas.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah, it's definitely a UFO for sure, and it exists. And some of the people here are aliens. Like, think about it.
I don't know
You could probably name 10 people in your life
that I think are
that are
probably-
fucking aliens.
Probably aliens. Yeah, you're probably right.
I think about 10 people. You know that. What's up with that guy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That guy is probably an alien.
Aliens are the thing about aliens though
Yeah,
is
they're
they're
hot.
like
They're sexy.
when they try to impersonate people like the Men in Black.
Yeah.
There's something. It's that uncanny valley almost effect where there's something not quite right.
Well, and haven't you met a lot of people like that? They're like, there's something not right.
Like they no because
people are
it's a
too
different thing. It's like they're not. You can tell something. They're trying too hard to be human looking or something.
How do you know?
That's what they say.
Oh, so here's my thing. Here's my theory. Listen to this, and I think I've got it solved. I just thought of this now.
Okay.
I've got it.
All right. Let's hear it.
Think about it. There's some people, not a lot, but there's a percentage of the population that are very, very attractive.
Yeah.
They're aliens.
You think?
Think about it. Every person you know that's like so attractive, because you can't really concentrate on what they're saying, sort of thing, because they're just like so attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody kind of kowtows to these people, whether they're good at what they do or maybe they're fumbling, but they're so good looking that everybody just gives them a pass, and they go through life. They're aliens sent here, and they're perfect looking because they're like a computer image or whatever it is. They use their technology.
Yeah, but whose
to make us
standards
think
are
they're
you
attractive.
using to say that they're
Our
attractive?
societies, and maybe
Ugh.
those aliens even have like infiltrated and been like, say that this is attractive, and so we all let these people slide. We don't. What I'm saying is we don't. Real attractive people, we don't really look at them much. Like we let them pass. Oh, you're fine. Like a security line. I'm sorry. Let me see your identification. Let me see. Oh, you're attractive. Go ahead.
Right.
Like everybody does that in clubs.
In
you
a
do
club.
that in probably the airplanes. Like probably, I would guess. What's the security at the airport? What are they called?
TSA.
TSA. They're probably like, let me check your bag. Oh, God, look at you. Go ahead. I'm not sure. I've never seen that, but I'm assuming that's what they do. Probably if you wanted to
Ridiculous.
if you want to get into the White House, if you're attractive, you could probably just walk right through.
Okay.
So
we done?
attractive people are the aliens. That's my thing. And I'm going to go ahead and accuse you because I think you're very attractive.
Aw, thanks, honey.
I think you're an alien.
Well, you would know.
How would I know? You're constantly manipulating my brain. How would I know? You got me brainwashed.
You think I'm brainwashed?
You're
you?
controlling me. These
If I controlled you, the house would be a lot cleaner. Let me just tell you something.
No. These HelloFresh boxes that come once a week, I think are like alien. It's like kryptonite or something.
We need to try to get them as a sponsor because we're spending so much.
Yeah, so we're at HelloFresh. If you're listening, we spend a lot of money on your food. It's delicious, but I think it's an alien. It's alien feed.
A bigger discount.
It's mind control alien feed that Amy is feeding me to keep me mind controlled.
That's right. Okay.
Anyway, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
It's time for this episode to end. This was a fun episode.
Stories.
I like you. It's nice that we weren't burdened by some shitty asshole guest.
It's been a while.
Just kidding, guests. We love all of you. And Don Garrett will have back another time. But it was nice for us to explore each other while we were doing this podcast.
There's something wrong with you.
But we got to get out of here. Let Dale through.
It's time to get out of here, Chuck Berry.
It is. Thank you for listening. Rate, review. Hey, if you haven't rated, reviewed, and subscribed, isn't it about time you did that, please?
Put it on your to-do list.
You need to. Get on the iTunes, even if you don't know how.
All right.
And even if you have rated, reviewed, and subscribed, start a new username and password and do it again.
Jesus.
Thanks, everyone. I love you.
All right,
I want to be with you.
Bye.
Baby, you could have bought me.
Timelines is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network, powered by Ortho Carolina. Find out more at queencitypodcastnetwork.com.
Make me some cookies, bitch.
Thank you. Love you.